Hi there. This video is on why the Long Night Age of Heroes prequel is a bad idea for Game of Thrones. Now, on June 8th, 2018, HBO announced that it had ordered a pilot for one of the Game of Thrones prequel pitches, this one by writer Jane Goldman, and that it would be about the Age of Heroes and the Long Night. The only brief description they gave about what it would be like, and the only real information you've heard about the story in these past 8 months, is that, quote, taking place thousands of years before the events of Game of Thrones, the series chronicles the world's descent from the golden age of heroes into its darkest hour. And only one thing is for sure. From the horrifying secrets of Westeros' history to the true origin of the White Walkers, the mysteries of the East to the Starks of legend, it's not the story we think we know. That's all we've heard about it between June and February. The announcement that HBO picked this prequel pitch out of 4 potential candidates took many fans and critics by surprise. And reaction to it has ranged from lukewarm to open negativity. These are, succinctly, the core problems with making a Long Night prequel TV series. In general principle. 1. It very specifically rehashes the White Walker storyline. 2. And this is more geared towards anyone out there, if you're a non-book reader and you don't know more backstory about this, it isn't actually based on any narratives that George R. R. Martin wrote. Not even a thin outline like other prequel ideas. That if you assumed, HBO is adapting some other novella he wrote, and no one told you, this isn't adapting anything. Not even a story outline given in the main novels. There really isn't anything based on what Martin did. Point 3... This extends to the point there aren't even really characters Martin outlined for this era. Named characters. And 4, a rehash should at least have a nostalgia hook. But very few world-building aspects, setting aspects of Game of Thrones would be in it. Even basic physical locations. King's Landing doesn't exist. That you wouldn't see any of the free cities. That none of this stuff exists yet. And in their descriptions of it, that's really all they keep repeating. Oh, it's great, the 7 kingdoms aren't unified yet. King's Landing doesn't exist. Without saying what is in it. That it offers only the absence of things. That at this point in time, it's primeval Westeros, 8,000 years ago, most of it was just old-growth forest. There are no towns or cities. It's not some lost civilization. It's mostly forest. So that's the short version. Now this may surprise some of you, but I am not a hardcore book purist. I never was. That in the early seasons of this, was championing Game of Thrones relative to strict adherence to the books. I knew it had to make concessions to be a TV show. Back when we were complaining about little things like leaving out a character here or there in Season 1, and not, why did you throw out all of Sansa and Stannis and all the Dorne character storylines by Season 5? Which is why I'm so angry about it. I defended this early on, and they threw it in our face of they turned out to not be responsible adaptation showrunners, and really was a betrayal of trust on that. I do not consider myself a book purist. I usually end up arguing with people online defending, well, they had to cut that for time. That this went above and beyond what any reasonable person could ask. That I have bad memories about fights with book purists in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and there's some things in the Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson that really upset me. They're great on me. But at the same time, it's such a large work that they got 90% of it right, tonally in most of it, I'm fine with. And I don't think it could please every single person. Even in my own family, there's people who liked certain parts that I didn't, that felt certain things in Lord of the Rings were tonally closer to the books that I disagree with, and vice versa. So, I am a betrayed TV fan of the early TV seasons. And you've seen this used as a tactic to just dismiss criticism for every major franchise when it declines of, we'll wave aside all criticism as, oh, you're just a bunch of irate purists, haters gotta hate, to scapegoat. And they even said that in their interviews right before season 7 at Time.com. They said, oh, people are upset at all, like the rape stuff we put in that wasn't in the books. Well, those people, they literally said, well, people just hate on us because we're popular. I talk about this in another video. Without addressing these criticisms seriously, if people just yell about us because we're famous. And that's the same rhetoric we've really heard for every major declining franchise, like when there's a bad Star Wars spin-off. I'm thinking of cartoons. Or when there's a bad Star Trek. I'm thinking of Voyager. Or the reimagined Battlestar Galactica by its later seasons relative to its earlier seasons. Or comic book superhero movies that you can easily scapegoat our critics are just purists because haters have to hate. And I've noticed it's harder to do that on original works like the TV series Lost or Heroes, that you can't blame purists when it's people who were fans of the earlier seasons pointing out criticisms. So I am a fan of the earlier Game of Thrones TV seasons when they were closer to the books, pointing out these are all these things that went crazy in the later seasons, and there are also issues with Long Night. I was working on these 4 basic points, these core problems, for a video, writing it up, since late June, actually. I put it on hold for months because a month later in July, I got a leak about a different prequel pitch, and I've been talking about that. So what you're about to see in the rest of the video explaining that is in isolation from any other news we got about The Long Night. It's meant to explain to a non-book reader, this is why objectively these are issues with making this, and I don't know any more than the rest of you. So the rest of this is going to be non-spoilers, just pointing out, well, there's no narrative, King's Landing doesn't exist, that sort of thing. And these 4 core problems are challenges, severe challenges, but not totally impossible. I mean, they're difficult. Even George R. R. Martin would have difficulty writing it up. But, and why would you do this over something established like Targaryen Conquest or Dance of the Dragons, that there's a novella to adapt? But after the shock wore off, what I'm saying is I'm not a book purist at heart, that after a few weeks, I honestly was trying to see the bright side of this. I was excited for, wow, there's going to be a female showrunner, a new set of writers, male or female, that it's not the same guys we were stuck with for all this time, that they didn't have a full writer's room on Game of Thrones because they wanted to micromanage everything. Fresh writers, looking forward to seeing what they would do with it. Yeah, it wasn't based on a heavy Martin narrative, but, I was starting to, there's interesting things. As a book fan, if Martin said, I'm going to write a novella about The Long Night, I would get worked up about that. I'd be excited for that. Even book readers are interested in what the world was like during The Long Night, so for about a month, I had cautious optimism. Let me try and I didn't reject this out of hand, but I was going to say these are issues that mean this is actually not the best out of the 4 ideas. I would rather have seen Dance of the Dragons, but okay. Then, in coming weeks, I received leak information. I can't say more than that, just I was told. How do I know? I was told. And I was told this leak information about The Long Night from a reliable source who told me other confirmable things, which I will not repeat. But it wasn't like, oh, I saw a leak on Reddit. It's someone who told me other leak stuff that turned out to be true on other things, told me this. And they were things so shocking, so insane, they're hard to believe. Even now, I only half believe it. It's so insane. But now I know that the Long Night prequel will be a disaster. And I'm not going to tell you what they told me. That I will only say that it's part of the basic setup description, not something they intend to do in the plot in season 2, which I disagree with. I was told, no, it's a basic setup thing that it would be evident in the pilot episode. Just, because season 1 isn't even scripted yet, that the pilot script is what exists now. That what I was told about, because we know so little about what the world was like in the Long Night, in the North, in Winterfell, anywhere, that when they actually describe the settings, characters, and events and stuff of the basic description of the pilot, and it's part of the basic description, and it will be pretty evident once descriptions of the filmed pilot start coming out later this summer. Sooner rather than later, that they can't, it's not, oh, this is some crazy thing like they're going to kill Ned Stark at the end of season 1. This is something that would be in the pilot. People try to brush this off as, oh, book purists versus TV fans. It's not about that at all. Like, TV Dorne or the season 7 White Hunt were so bad that even TV-only viewers hated them. It wasn't a books versus TV series issue. And you've seen people try to brush off even Dorne as, oh, well, you like the books more. People who watched that in isolation, who never even heard that this was based on a novel series, thought this was bad. It's like that. It's bigger than that, actually. Because it's not just that it isn't books versus TV series. Even people who never watched Game of Thrones, much less people who didn't read the books, even people who didn't watch Game of Thrones will think this is a crazy idea for a TV show. When they hear about The Long Night, when they actually get a thorough description of what the pilot episode is like, and the overall setting description. When you get a full description of that, it isn't, even people who liked Game of Thrones and defend it now, even people who never watched Game of Thrones will think this is insane. It's that big. And if you think, oh, I'm exaggerating, the new head of HBO's drama department, Casey Bloys, is going around to press panels, like at the Television Critics Association, championing how The Long Night will be an amazing prequel while giving no details about it. He just goes, it's going to be great because it's a prequel to Game of Thrones. And he suspiciously says nothing about it. We're getting castings of, like, Naomi Watts, but no descriptions of her character in any substance. But Casey Bloys is the one going around praising this. This was his favorite pick for a prequel. And he's the same guy who thought Confederate was a great idea. Who greenlit, he ordered Confederate for HBO and even went so far as to make a public announcement of it, based purely on a pitch meeting with Benioff and Weiss with no script. He just had a pitch meeting with them, and he thought, wow, this is so great. And even later they had to, we probably shouldn't have just put this out as a print press release. We should have had a whole panel or video of what we were trying to do, just a paragraph blurb about this. I don't think you could defend it in any context, but specifically because people are annoyed that Benioff, of all people, would be running this after all of his mishandling of sensitive, like, rape-type stuff or race stuff in Game of Thrones. So what I'm saying is, I don't know if this is true, but at this point, I think HBO is capable of anything. And I ask if you really can say, after the Confederate thing, does Casey Bloys deserve your blind trust? That this was his pick after Confederate. And that, okay, I'm some guy online saying I heard this crazy rumor about it that I'm pretty sure is true. Confederate was real. My source was reliable for other things, but admittedly showed me no hard evidence of what they told me. They showed me hard evidence of unrelated things on other projects, but for this, nothing. Just verbally, they explained what the Long Night is like. And they had no need to lie, because I already said, I think the Long Night is a deeply problematic prequel idea. I don't want it. There's so many better ideas for prequels. So I don't think they were lying, but it is entirely possible that they were misinformed. Maybe it was just untrue rumors they heard, which they were repeating to me. Or they were accurate, but they were early ideas that were later scrapped as crazy. But a source that was reliable on other matters told me this, and after the Confederate debacle, nothing is too crazy to be true at HBO. So I think it's real, what they told me. I'm not going to tell you the big reason the Long Night prequel will be bad, which I was told, because, first, I have no evidence. Why would I announce this? Oh, I heard an unsubstantiated rumor that I wasn't even shown, artwork or something. There was no proof of this even to me, and it's so insane I only half believe it. But it seems so plausible. What isn't plausible anymore with HBO after Confederate? So it's so crazy. On top of this, even if I told you, many people wouldn't believe me, because they don't want to believe me. That no, HBO, if you told someone about Confederate before they announced it, they'd say, that you can't be serious. I didn't believe rumors about the Season 7 White Hunt, as that's so stupid, they'd never do that. This can't be a real report. And it turned out to be entirely true. This is worse than that. So it's so crazy, it strains belief, even though they've done things before that we just rejected out of hand as no one's as crazy. Third is, HBO might get angry at me, not that I really care, but more importantly, this is really the sole reason, why would I save them from themselves? Why? Why will I warn them not to do this? This will be poetic justice. Like how the Lannisters and their allies, in the books at least, win after the Red Wedding, only to start falling apart due to their own flaws. That sanity has its advantages. That the Bolton rule over the North just starts falling apart because, if you're that crazy all the time, it's impractical. That the Lannisters fall apart largely due to Cersei's own incompetence. That the whole reason we loathe these characters is because they're not good at it. So all of these years of, we don't need George R.R. Martin, Benioff and Weiss can make a great show without him. And then you got Confederate. I'm starting to think Game of Thrones started out as a hit because it was based on his books and not because of them. Or other people saying, and now we don't need a prequel based on Martin's writings and prequel novellas. HBO will invent our own prequel to pander to casual viewers of the TV show. And The Long Night is what they got. Comparable to that. The Long Night prequel, just the pilot alone, will destroy the career of anyone attached. AT&T will be upset when they find out. I don't think, people have asked me this on Twitter, I honestly don't know. I don't think AT&T is actually having much oversight over this yet. That AT&T just bought HBO's parent company, and they've been having talks about this. We don't live in a world where the crazy executives running HBO can do whatever the heck they want with no consequences. They are failing. If they were good at their jobs, AT&T wouldn't have bought HBO. That they're facing increasing competition from Netflix, from Amazon. There will be oversight from AT&T now. That I suspect that as any sane person, it's probable AT&T wasn't heavily scrutinizing what HBO was doing up to now with the prequels. They didn't want to micromanage it. But when they see what the actual pilot is like, that I don't see Casey Bloys' career surviving this. That he isn't even their longtime head of the drama department. It's the previous head of the drama department left after he resigned in shame after Vinyl failed. and they promoted up Blois as an interim replacement. He used to be head of the comedy division and really a hands-off guy at that. He keeps saying, I didn't do that much. I just trusted people to do what they wanted, which is probably what got us into this mess. Consistently, he greenlights stupid ideas because, well, I don't like telling people what to do. So I don't see his career surviving this. Then again, I'm surprised it survived Confederate. The Confederate rollout disasters. But if you fail too many times, the higher-ups will start to notice and look for people to blame. So I really think this will at the least harm him. That how could you possibly have picked this, given what it's like? Or if you didn't know what it was like, why weren't you scrutinizing it more? Your job is to pick and choose what projects we make. You can't just rubber stamp everything. I think this will also severely harm Jane Goldman's career. How merited that is, I'm not sure, because there's been plenty of times where I saw a terrible TV show and I blamed the writers for a while, and then I found out there was crazy executive meddling, and the writers themselves didn't really want to do it that way. For the moment, up to now, I assume that everything in the descriptions that I heard was stuff Jane Goldman wanted to be in there. But I can't be sure, and even if I feel bad if it was unmerited that she didn't want it this way, she'll end up getting blamed regardless, whether she wanted it or not. Certainly the HBO executives have greenlit it. Now, I feel bad for all the cast members that were just announced, because some of these actors are people I like. And they sign on to this in good faith, thinking it'll be the next Game of Thrones, it'll make us successes, and it'll really be a stain on their careers. So ultimately, this will be poetic justice, and the big reason I'm not telling you is, why save them from themselves? Why would I, if I could go back in time and pull aside Blois and Benioff before the Confederate announcement and tell them, don't do this is stupid, it'll really make you look bad. Why would I save them after everything they've done and screwed up on Game of Thrones? Why save them? That would only help them. So if they're worried, oh no, this guy's threatening to destroy Long Night, far from it. I'm not going to tell anyone the crazy stuff they're doing. They'll fall that much harder when they have no one to blame but themselves. I'm going to just stand back and watch it burn. They'll look up and shout, save us! And I'll whisper, no. And from the ash, we will rebuild a new empire. With a better prequel. In the event that HBO tries to silence me, of course, I've already made info packets containing all of this leak info and sent them out for safekeeping to key figures in the fandom. Steve Atwell, Adam Whitehead, several others. With instructions not to share them publicly, but privately spread the warning. Simply, this is something I heard about how crazy this is. I have no real evidence, but don't put your blind trust in an HBO project we know nothing about for certain. These are people who have broken every promise to us in the past. Dorne will be great. Stannis will do stuff in Season 5. Season 7 will be great, not crazy White Hunt stuff. These are people who've rolled out crazy thing after crazy thing. Like after Confederate, why would you have blind faith in any of these people? The whole point of this video, with the other 4 points, is just to warn you guys, this is problematic at best. Maybe you shouldn't devote all of your energy onto this as the prequel. Because HBO, Blois is trying to hype it up as, well, why is it good? Because it's the prequel. There's 3 other prequel ideas that are waiting in the wings that he likes this one most of all. He's hyping it because he bet his career on it. So I'm saying adopt a wait-and-see attitude, and the only thing Long Night has going for it is that they're hyping it as the prequel to Game of Thrones, without any substance, when there's other prequel ideas. So I'm not threatening. What have you actually heard here? Any slander, any suable thing HBO can say? No. I heard some unsubstantiated rumors that made me nervous about the Long Night, and I caution you all to trust but verify. Wait and see what they actually say about it instead of blindly trusting the hype of the people who've done so much to us in the past. So I was already working on this 4-point analysis of why the Long Night prequel is a bad idea in general principle, even before I heard this leak info. So if you watch this, you're not going to hear anything more you've already heard. So disregarding the things I was told, these are things we know to be inherently problematic, in addition to scary things you don't know yet. I'm just warning you all, don't put all your eggs in one basket on this if HBO has told you nothing about it. And point blame at the HBO executives who chose this, such an obviously problematic prequel idea, over more established things like there's a whole prequel novella or book now, Fire and Blood, about the Targaryen conquest or the Dance of the Dragons. And when you hear what the pilot is like, know that Casey Bloys picked this ahead of those other ideas. Not just this boring idea, but this crazy idea. And I can't tell you, if you think, oh, we're sitting around feeling glum about this, HBO won. Every time they make out empty hype about The Long Night with a casting announcement with no context, analysis videos with no basis in anything, I am sitting here giggling because it's like knowing about Confederate months before they announced it, knowing they are shooting themselves in the foot with this and this will damage some careers. It's that bad. So I'm just sitting here giggling of, wouldn't you like to know? And it will be glorious. And I can't wait for I really can't. I almost pity them. Just how hard this is going to fall. So things are looking up. Hope for the future. But for now, I'm just going through so you can articulate to other people on your own why this was a bad idea to begin with through these 4 points.